Hello everybody, this is Dragonzilla1991 here, and for today's session tonight, depending on what time it is when you're watching this video, I will be taking a look at the Bandai Destroy All Monsters High Grade / Gashapon set, which I was supposed to have for the Christmas of late 2024, but unfortunately it got delayed, and I didn't receive it until mid-January. And I've had this set for quite a while now, so let's talk about this set, as I've been dying to make a video on it since the day I received it. As you can see, it's dedicated to the 1968 movie Destroy All Monsters, and contains 4 reptilian kaiju who feature in the film, 2 famous and popular characters, and 2 obscurities. Before we look at the first monster, I will point out that the new Gashapon models are actually a little taller than their older predecessors. I meant to do a size comparison, but I forgot. However, if you own this set and other high-grade figures, then you know what I mean. First up is the king himself, Godzilla, and we can see that this is the 68 incarnation who made his debut in Destroy All Monsters, as he has his hands raised up, giving a victory pose, because this is what he's well known for. Out of all depictions for the King of the Monsters, I'm quite surprised that Bandai never made a Gashapon figure of the 68 to 72 Godzilla. Oh yes, we have gotten models of him in their Movie Monster Series line, as well as Bandai Creations, which is of course the American counterpart. And last year, Tamashii Nations introduced him for their SH Monster Art series, and I did a review on him shortly after receiving him for my birthday. Links in the description below in case you wish to see the video, but to my knowledge there hasn't been any miniatures of Godzilla 1968. In the past, when recreating castings for the films that were made between 68 and 72, I've had to improvise and use Mosagoji and Megagoji to take his place. However, now there's no need. His face looks really good, as it matches the suit's likeness perfectly well, and I love the tone, which is a nice red and really pops out. His paint job portrays him in charcoal black, as seen in the movies, and his dorsal spines are a silvery colour. I like the battle pose that he's in, as it looks as if he's getting ready to tackle a foe like Gigan. The 2 kaiju do appear to look great together, and look as if they were made for each other, to fight that is. You know what I mean. Gigan is out of the Godzilla -1 Gashapon set, that I also covered last year, by the way. Links in the description below. Thanks, Gigan. There he goes, he's leaving the desk to cause some mayhem and destruction. And of course, he also looks good with his best friend / buddy sidekick, Anguirus. And if you own the Akura model of the character, then this would be excellent, especially if you wish to recreate that memorable scene from Godzilla vs. Gigan when they speak. Hey, Anguirus! What do you want? Something funny is going on. You better check. Okay. Hurry up. Christ, I'm only 33 years old, and this is what he looks like with some miniature dinosaurs. Anyway, Godzilla's just great as always, and the 68 incarnation is a welcome addition to the range, especially because he was the most requested. Well, by me that is. Not sure about anybody else, but I suspect so. The second kaiju is the lovable Baragon, and as we all know, the odd time we did see him in the picture, he was on all fours, unlike the Gashapon that shows him standing upright. But in Frankenstein vs. Baragon, aka Frankenstein Conquers the World, he would now and then be bipedal, mainly when fighting Frankenstein, so this figure works either way. Now Baragon, as we all remember, didn't do much in Destroy All Monsters. He was meant to have a bigger part, but the suit had been used to portray many kaiju in the Ultraman franchise for Super Red Studios, and was converted back into Baragon. When returned to Toho, it was pretty much unusable. The pose portrays him in a real attack strike, and I can even imagine him making this movement against King Ghidorah if given the chance. I like the haul, which looks pretty decent. I remember when this set was announced, people were criticising the Horde by saying that it didn't look accurate, to which I say, well, because it's only a miniature, it would really be super hard to recreate perfectly. This was the case for the old Gashapon model of him, but the new one looks pretty good nonetheless. I also like his big ears that make him stick out from the rest of the crowd. However, on the new high-grade figure, they are separate pieces, and not sculpted on like the original miniature, and could easily pop out. Another feature that makes the character stand out from other monsters would be his back, which would be seen on most other kaiju in Ultraman, and his underbelly are square patterns. I'm not sure if they're meant to be osteoderms or not, but that's what they kind of remind me of. Baragon is very well known to switch between biped and quadruped, and this model shows him standing upright. In fact, many figures of this incarnation of the character portray him standing upright. In recent times, Showa Baragon appears to be getting a lot more love and attention in merchandise, from Mezco to Bandai, and it really does make a nice change from the usual King Ghidorah, Heisei that is, Mothra and Shin Godzilla. Another kaiju who's been getting a lot of attention in recent times, merchandise-wise that is good old Gorosaurus. Now, compared to the original Gashapon figure of him, the new model is more screen accurate. The new miniature portrays him in a dark green colour scheme, when in the movie he was lighter green, and in some promotion material he appears to be light grey, but he still looks nice in the dark green. Also, the underbelly should be weathered yellow, and the throat pouch a faded red. But aside from those inaccuracies, he does look really nice. I also like the red tongue inside the mouth, but the jaw doesn't have articulation. Unlike the original model that was straight in design, the new figure is rather hunched over, as this was after all an actor in a large dinosaur suit, so of course he's gonna look like this. The way the miniature has been sculpted, he just kind of reminds me of the Mezco model. In fact, the pose is fairly identical. I like the blade-like spike at the end of his tail, which reminds me of a scorpion stinner, even though I think it's meant to be ivory just like the spines on his back. It's really hard to tell, because I don't think we get a good look of his back in the movies. Well, we do, but only a little bit. I said this in my thoughts and opinions video, and I'll say it again here, but Gorosaurus is my all-time favourite out of this set, and he was a favourite the moment I saw his promotion. Not just one of the set's best, but one of the best updated Gashapon figures in general. Finally, and last but certainly not least, is the King of the Skies, / Emperor of all pterosaurs himself, Rodan the Pterodactyl Kaiju. So this incarnation of the character doesn't really get represented that often, despite the fact that he was more common in the Showa period. The paint job on this high-grade model is completely dark brown, with the exceptions of the beak and claws, that are clean white, where they should be weathered, and the spikes on his underbelly should be weathered yellow. The Mezco model reflects this perfectly well. He has such a magnificent pose that shows him giving off his majesty, and thus Rodan is often seen in this pose. He comes with an accessory, which is this support stand that keeps him upright. He can't technically stand without it, but I display him with it in, and it's stuck in much better, unlike the Gargantua brothers, where they're constantly coming out all the time, so I'm glad that's been fixed. However, now that he does still fall flat on his front. The facial expression looks neutral compared to the movie, where he appears to look absolutely drunk. Again, going back to the Mezco model, we see this clearly. I do plan to review those figures someday. Rodan doesn't have a lot of merchandise, well, of the second generation that is, and especially in Bandai's Gashapon line, as most of the time it tends to be the original. Also, Rodan doesn't get much attention in the high grade series. In fact, I believe that this is the 4th miniature of the character that they have done at present, so how about Fire Rodan next time? Now, what are my final thoughts on this set? Well, this is truly a great set, and fantastic to finally have both the 68 to 72 Godzilla and 60s Rodan, as well as 2 updated models of 2 characters that we rarely get. I hope that we get more kaiju from Destroy All Monsters as time goes on, because I would honestly love to see a second set from this film, maybe continuing on where Mezco left off, because they didn't make everybody, such as Varan, Kumonga and Manda, especially since we don't get merchandise of those characters. But then again, that might be awkward, because Bandai like to place Godzilla in every single one of these miniature sets. Yeah, I know he's the main character, however they could always add another incarnation of the king, but those other 3 monsters I just want. However, there's a possibility that Bandai might call it a day with Destroy All Monsters and focus on other movies. But either way, I do hope that we get Gashapon models of 68 Manda and Kumonga and an updated figure of Varan. Anyway, this set is highly recommendable, especially if you're a show enthusiast like myself. This is Dragonzilla 1991 signing out. Take care, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.